Our HOA tried to force one of us out after our parents died, until the whole neighborhood fought back. The HOA told my sister and me that our family no longer existed after our mom died, and they tried to force one of us out of the only home we've ever known. I was never supposed to be standing in this house alone, at least not like this. Not with my sister and me suddenly responsible for everything our parents left behind. I'm 21 and my sister is 19, and this house is the only place either of us has ever called home. Our parents bought it before either of us were born, nearly 3 decades ago, and we grew up here learning how the wood floors creak at night, how the sunlight hits the living room in the early morning, and how Mom always left a stack of folded blankets on the couch because she was convinced anyone could get cold at any time. 15 years ago, they joined the neighborhood's HOA. I barely understood what that meant as a kid. Something about fees and neighborhood standards, and the kind of things grown-ups handled without telling us. Still, the HOA was always just a background detail in our lives, something that seemed to matter a lot to our parents and almost nothing to us. Then everything changed. 5 years ago, we lost our dad. His passing left a hole in our family that never fully closed. Then 6 months ago, we lost Mom. That second loss felt like the world stepped on the part of my chest that was still healing. Suddenly, the home that had always been full felt like it had been hollowed out in an instant. Despite everything, one thing was still clear. This house was ours. Our parents had worked their entire lives to build a safe, stable life for us here. And after everything that happened, my sister and I wanted nothing more than to stay in our childhood home and hold onto that last piece of our family. But the HOA apparently had different ideas. It started slowly. A knock at the door one afternoon. A polite-sounding woman who introduced herself as being from the HOA. She reminded us, in a friendly voice, that the neighborhood was zoned for single-family households, and according to their rules, a single family meant a parent or parents and their legal unmarried children. Mom fit that definition when she was alive. But with her gone, the HOA was now insisting that my sister and I, as 2 legal adults living together, were no longer a single family. She said one of us needed to move out. I honestly thought it was some kind of misunderstanding. I even thought maybe she was confused about who we were. We had lived here our entire lives. Everyone knew us, and this neighborhood had watched us grow up. So I explained that this was our home and that we were siblings. She nodded politely but repeated the same line. Siblings, by their rules, did not count as a single family. We were 2 adults, therefore 2 separate households, therefore a violation. I waited for her to give us paperwork or something official. She didn't. She just said we had been reminded. A few days later, someone else from the HOA came. Same reminder, same polite tone, still no paperwork. The 3rd visit happened at night while we were eating dinner. It scared my sister so much she froze with her fork in mid-air. Again, the same message. You must comply with community rules. Again, no documents, no written terms, nothing to review. It wasn't until the 4th visit, 4, that I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. They were genuinely insisting that my sister and I were not allowed to live in our own house together. Every time they came, I asked for a copy of the HOA terms. I told them we couldn't possibly respond, agree, or even understand what they wanted unless we had the actual rules. They always smiled, nodded, and said they would send us a copy. They never did. It became clear that they were never planning to give it to us, and then came the threat. During the 4th visit, the man at the door said they didn't want to resort to legal action out of respect for our parents. He said the board knew our family and wanted to handle this gently, but if we kept refusing to comply, they would have no choice but to sue us. Suing us. To make one of us leave our own house. My sister burst into tears after that visit. She cried in the entrance hallway for a long time, long enough that I sat beside her and cried with her. Everything felt so unfair. We had just lost our mom, and now we were fighting to stay in the home she left us. A home we legally owned. A home we had never been away from for more than a few days at a time. The idea that someone could tell us we weren't allowed to live here together felt unreal. We didn't have much guidance or experience with legal stuff. We were still trying to figure out our parents' paperwork and bills, and now we were learning that we might have to defend ourselves from the HOA. I asked myself the same questions over and over again. Could the HOA really kick one of us out? Could they force us to choose which one gets to stay? Could they actually drag us into court over this? To make sense of what was happening, I tried looking for the HOA rules among my parents' documents. I went through folders labeled property, HOA, taxes, insurance, everything. But there was nothing about the specific bylaws or the CC&R, the document that actually outlines the HOA rules. So each time the HOA knocked on our door, I asked them again for the terms. Each time they gave excuses. They told us they were just there to give us a friendly reminder. They said we were legally required to comply. They insisted their rules were very clear. But they never handed anything to us, never offered anything in writing. I even asked them once, while holding the front door barely halfway open, "Shouldn't you stop coming here until you can actually provide proof of the rule you're saying we broke?" They just repeated they were giving a reminder and left. The whole situation made me feel trapped. It started to feel like harassment, like they were counting on us being young, overwhelmed, and without resources. They were acting as if they could simply pressure us into giving up and moving out. It felt deliberate, as if they thought two young adults wouldn't know how to stand up for ourselves. Meanwhile, my sister was terrified every time someone knocked on the door. She started avoiding staying home alone. She kept asking me if we really might lose the house. I didn't know how to answer her. I didn't want to lie, but I didn't want to scare her either. Trying to find support, I talked to neighbors. Most of them seemed confused when I told them what the HOA was saying. Some asked, "Can they really do that?" Others said they'd never heard of such a rule. A few even said they thought the HOA had always been strict, but they had never seen them try something like this. Someone suggested that I attend the next HOA meeting, but honestly, I was intimidated. I felt like showing up alone would mean walking into a room full of people who had already decided we were in violation of some rule we didn't even have access to. I also wondered whether any judge would even support their interpretation of family. It sounded so absurd, punishing siblings for living together, for staying in their own home, for trying to continue their lives after losing both parents. Still, they kept showing up. And every visit made the anxiety worse. By this point, my sister and I were emotionally drained. We kept imagining what our mom would say about all of this. She used to laugh about the HOA long emails and overly strict rules about fence heights and mailbox maintenance, but she always paid her dues and tried to stay on the board's good side. She would have never imagined that after she passed, the same HOA would try to force her daughters out of the home she worked her whole life to protect. Every night, I kept replaying the same question in my mind: is this even legal? Can they really do this to us? I knew we needed answers. I knew we needed help. But most of all, I knew we couldn't let them force us apart, not after everything we had lost. And that's where things stood when I wrote my post online, hoping someone, somewhere could tell us what to expect next, and how two sisters could possibly fight something like this. Update: after I posted my original story, my sister and I decided we couldn't just keep waiting for the HOA to show up again. The stress had gotten to the point where every unexpected knock at the door made both of us jump. So the first thing we did was try to confirm whether the people coming to our house were actually representatives from the HOA or just neighbors acting on their own. It turned out they really were from the HOA. Once we knew that, our next step was to get our hands on the actual rules. The CC&R, which outlines everything the HOA says we're supposed to follow. We had asked for it repeatedly, but after weeks of being ignored, we realized we had to go around them. We eventually tracked down the CC&R directly through another neighbor, someone who had kept a stored copy and was kind enough to let us borrow it. I remember sitting at the dining table with the thick packet in front of us. It felt like reading a legal textbook written by someone who didn't actually want anyone to understand it. But one part was easy to understand, and it punched me in the chest. The definition of family. According to the HOA, a single-family household could include spouses, children, grandchildren, parents, grandparents, stepchildren, stepparents, aunts and uncles, nieces and nephews, cousins, children of nieces or nephews, basically. Almost every type of relative you could imagine. Except siblings. Siblings were specifically not included. And that wasn't the only shock. The document also said that even co-owners of a property were not allowed to live together unless they fit the single-family definition. That meant my sister and I, two legal co-owners of the home our parents left us, were labeled as ineligible to live together according to the HOA. Reading that was like discovering a trap we hadn't known existed. It felt so unfair and so bizarre that our relationship, the one person I had left in the world who understood everything we'd been through, didn't count. As if the moment wasn't already stressful enough, a week later, we received a letter from the HOA. It was surprisingly brief, but still felt cold and formal. It stated that we were in violation of the single-family rule and needed to take corrective action to bring the property into compliance. The letter said failure to comply could result in legal action. Seeing it written out made something inside me snap. For months, we had been dealing with polite knocks, vague reminders, and verbal pressure. But now it was official. They were actually trying to force us apart. I could see panic start rising in my sister's eyes as she read the letter. I told her, "We are not letting them push us out of our own home." But truthfully, I didn't yet know how we were going to fight back. And then, something very unexpected happened. My sister, who had cried every time someone from the HOA showed up at our door, looked at me with a kind of fire I hadn't seen in her before. She said, "If they want to play by their rules, then we'll show everyone what their rules actually say." That's how our plan began. We printed out copies of the CC&R pages that defined family. We printed the violation letter, too. Then we went door to door to every home in the neighborhood. We wanted people to see exactly what the HOA was trying to do, not just to us, but what they could do to their own children one day. Every time someone opened the door, I took a deep breath and said the same thing. Imagine something happened to you tomorrow. Would you want your kids to be kicked out of your home? Because they're doing that to us, and they can do it to any of your kids, too. I expected people to react with confusion or disbelief. But what we got was something else entirely: anger, frustration, disappointment, and a surprising amount of sympathy. As we kept going house to house, it became clear that the HOA had a history of upsetting neighbors, not just us. People shared stories about unfair citations, unreturned calls, small issues being turned into large ones, and the board ignoring complaints. It felt like we had accidentally uncovered a long list of frustrations the entire neighborhood had been holding onto for years. By the end of 2 days, we had spoken to nearly everyone. We gathered signatures from neighbors who agreed that what the HOA was doing was wrong. And almost everyone who signed also promised they would contact the HOA president directly. And they did. Within 2 weeks, our mailbox held another letter, this time from the HOA president. I felt my heart pounding as I opened it. My sister hovered behind me, nervous and hopeful at the same time. Inside was a short apology letter. It said the violation had been a mistake that took 4 in-person visits, endless verbal warnings, a formal written violation, and the threat of legal action before they supposedly realized it wasn't valid. A mistake that caused my sister to lose sleep for months. A mistake that made us feel like outsiders in our own neighborhood. The letter also said the HOA would not pursue further action, that we were allowed to stay, and that the issue was resolved. But the neighborhood was not done, not even close. All those conversations we had with our neighbors had opened a door that couldn't be closed. People began talking to each other. They started comparing experiences, and once they realized how much frustration they all shared, something powerful happened. A group of homeowners decided they were going to run for positions on the HOA board to replace the current leaders. Not only that, they also planned to push for a community-wide vote on whether the HOA should be dissolved entirely. Many said they were tired of the board acting like the neighborhood's strict guardians while contributing nothing meaningful to the community. For the first time since this nightmare began, my sister and I felt hope. Not just for us, but for everyone who lived here. I didn't expect to feel pride out of any of this, but I did. Not because we defeated the HOA, but because we stood up for ourselves at a time when we felt small and lost, and because we helped bring our neighborhood together in a way we never imagined. Today, my sister and I still live in the home our parents left us. Every time we sit on the porch, or hear the creaking floors at night, or see the sunlight fall on the living room, it reminds us of why we fought so hard to stay. We fought for our home. We fought for our family, and we won. And now, the people in our neighborhood are ready to take back control of the place they all call home, together.